Florida's underworld is a complex web of power, influence, and survival. Beneath the surface of its sunny beaches and bustling cities lies a different reality, one shaped by the presence of organized groups that have left a significant mark on the state. These groups, with their distinct codes and relentless pursuits, have become forces to reckon with. As we delve into the top 10 most dangerous gangs in Florida, the stories reveal a world where strength is tested, territories are contested, and the stakes are always high. Number 10. Trinitarios Gang. The Trinitarios is a Dominican-American gang that emerged from the streets of New York City in 1993, initially formed by Dominican inmates seeking protection within the confines of the city's prisons. Over the years, this once small group evolved into a sprawling criminal organization, extending its reach far beyond the Northeast, infiltrating communities across the United States, including Florida. In Florida, the Trinitarios found fertile ground in areas with significant Dominican populations, particularly in cities like Miami and Orlando. While their presence in the Sunshine State may not be as dominant as other notorious gangs, the Trinitarios have nonetheless carved out a reputation for their involvement in a variety of criminal activities that have kept law enforcement on high alert. Their operations in Florida have largely centered around violent crimes, including assaults, home invasions, and the distribution of illegal substances. Despite being less organized compared to other major gangs, their unpredictability and the violence associated with their activities make them a significant threat. One particularly unsettling aspect of the Trinitarios is their strategy of infiltrating schools to recruit new members. This tactic has allowed them to bolster their ranks with impressionable young people, often drawing them into a life of crime before they even reach adulthood. The presence of the Trinitarios in Florida's schools has led to heightened concerns among educators, parents, and law enforcement, as the gang's influence over these young recruits can have lasting and damaging effects on communities. The Trinitarios have also clashed with rival gangs, particularly those that operate in similar territories or challenge their control over criminal enterprises. These conflicts often result in violent confrontations that put innocent bystanders at risk and contribute to the overall sense of danger that surrounds the gang. Despite the challenges posed by law enforcement efforts to curb their activities, the Trinitarios continue to exist in Florida, though their influence fluctuates. Number 9. NAS Gang. The NAS Gang, originally formed in 1970 inside the Rio Piedras State Penitentiary in Puerto Rico, began as a group focused on protecting its members within the prison walls. Over time, the gang evolved, extending its influence beyond the prison system to the streets of Puerto Rico, and later to various parts of the United States, including Florida. What started as a means of survival behind bars soon transformed into one of the most dominant and dangerous criminal organizations, particularly within Hispanic communities. Their involvement in violent crime, particularly in the illegal substance trade, painted a clear picture of their dangerous nature. The NAS expansion into Florida brought with it a wave of criminal activities that made them a feared group in the state. The gang's operations in Florida mirrored those in Puerto Rico, with members engaging in acts of violence and control over substance distribution. Their presence was particularly strong in areas with significant Hispanic populations, where they competed with other gangs for territory and dominance. One of the most chilling examples of the NAS brutality is the case involving Luis Benitez, also known as Lai, along with Alvaro Cabral, known as Booby, and Jason Cabral, known as J-Live. This group, driven by gang loyalty and a desire to assert their power, targeted a young man named Anthony Marcano due to his affiliation with a rival gang, the Latin Kings. On August 10, 2004, under the direction of Jason Cabral, the group devised a plan to rob and eliminate Marcano. The plan was as cold-blooded as it was calculated. Marcano was lured to a house in Brentwood, believing it to be a routine meeting. However, he arrived with his friend, Fabian Mestres, a fellow member of the Latin Kings. Once inside the house, both Marcano and Mestres were overpowered, bound with duct tape, and robbed of their belongings. The gang members didn't stop there. They forced the young men into the trunk of a car and drove them to a secluded location. It was there that Benitez, with the help of Alvaro Cabral, ended their lives with a shotgun, leaving their bodies behind a warehouse, a stark reminder of the Nietas' ruthlessness. The Nietas' history of conflict with rival gangs like the Latin Kings added to their dangerous reputation. These rivalries often erupted into violent confrontations, further destabilizing the communities where they operated. The gang's willingness to resort to extreme measures to eliminate threats only cemented their position as one of the most feared groups in Florida. Number 8. Zoe Pound Gang. In the lively streets of Miami, a group emerged in 1990 that would come to be known as the Zoe Pound Gang. Born from the struggles and survival instincts of Haitian immigrants, this gang formed as a means of protection and retaliation against those who targeted their community. The name Zoe Pound itself is rooted in the Creole word zo, meaning bone, symbolizing their toughness and resilience, as these individuals were known to be hard to the bone. Initially, Zoe Pound was not the violent group it would later become. It began as a vigilante self-defense group, a reaction to the discrimination and violence faced by Haitian Americans in Miami. But as the pressures of their environment intensified, so too did their activities. By 1997, the gang had caught the media's attention with a series of high-profile crimes, including the robbery of ships along the Miami River. The crew members were subjected to brutal treatment, sending a clear message that Zoe Pound was a force to be reckoned with. The gang's operations extended far beyond Miami's borders. They became heavily involved in illegal activities, including the transportation and sale of illegal substances. These activities funded the gang's operations and fueled further acts of violence to maintain their grip on power. Soon, their reputation grew even darker, as their involvement in illicit trade led to numerous incidents of robbery and violence. One of the most very scary tales tied to Zoe Pound involves Wesnell Isaac, a feared enforcer known as a Zoe Boy. Isaac's notoriety reached its peak in 2007 when he and other gang members took the life of 3 men, Robert Barkley, Scott Highfill, and Willard Graham, from Barkley's Bonita Springs home in September 3, 2007. The captives were subjected to physical assault before meeting a violent end. Their remains were later discovered in a vehicle in Lehigh Acres, a grim reminder of the lengths Zoe Pound would go to maintain their influence. Zoe Pound's reach even extended to connections with other powerful criminal organizations. They were linked to the Black Mafia family in Atlanta, forming alliances that strengthened their criminal network. However, not all associations were friendly. Zoe Pound became rivals with MS-13, a gang notorious for its own brutal tactics. This rivalry added another layer of tension to an already volatile mix of gang violence in Florida. Despite numerous efforts by local and federal authorities to dismantle the gang, Zoe Pound remains active to this day. Number 7. Bloods Gang. Originating in Los Angeles in the early 1970s, the Bloods started as a response to the growing power of the Crips, their longtime rivals. Over the years, the Bloods expanded their reach, eventually establishing a presence in various states, including Florida. Unlike their origins, where the gang primarily consisted of African-American members, today's Bloods are a diverse group that includes Caucasians, Hispanics, and Asians. In Florida, the Bloods have become notorious for their involvement in a wide range of criminal activities, including violence, heist, and substance distribution. The story of Antonio Eugene Bruton, a member of the Bloods from Ocklawaha, exemplifies the dangerous nature of the gang. In 2023, Bruton was sentenced to over 16 years in federal prison for possessing firearms and distributing large quantities of illegal substances, including methamphetamine, fentanyl, heroin, and marijuana. His arrest followed a series of undercover operations by the Substance Enforcement Administration, which revealed his extensive involvement in the substance trade. During a search of Bruton's residence, law enforcement discovered large amounts of narcotics, firearms, and nearly $30,000 in cash. Bruton's criminal history, which includes multiple felony convictions, underscores the persistent threat posed by members of the Bloods in Florida. Another chilling example of the Bloods' violent nature involved Sanders, a 23-year-old gang member who manipulated a 19-year-old named James Swanson into attempting a burglary. Promising Swanson a higher status within the gang if he succeeded, Sanders sent him to steal from a marijuana dealer. However, the plan went awry, and Swanson was shot by a friend of the dealer. Though Swanson survived, the incident led to an investigation that resulted in Sanders' arrest on charges including attempted assault, home invasion, and heist. This case highlights the Bloods' willingness to recruit and exploit young individuals for their criminal activities, often leading them into life-threatening situations. The Bloods' history in Florida is also marked by a series of violent incidents that shook communities to their core. Number 6. Surenos Gang. Originating from Southern California, Sur 13 is part of a much larger and notorious network spread across the United States. The gang's roots are intertwined with the Mexican Mafia, a prison gang that has long been involved in various criminal enterprises. Though Sur 13's influence in Florida is not as pronounced as in states like California, their activities in the Sunshine State are nonetheless concerning. The history of Sur 13 in Florida traces back to their connections with other criminal organizations, both in and out of prison. The gang's presence here is marked by violence, particularly among Latino communities. They operate under the banner of loyalty to the Mexican Mafia, and their connections to other gangs such as the Sinaloa Cartel and the Gulf Cartel enhance their power and influence. One of the most disturbing incidents linked to Sur 13 in Florida involved two teenage brothers, Guadalupe Martinez Pino and Manuel Martinez Pino, members of the gang. On a late August night, these brothers unleashed a wave of terror in the Green Acres area mobile home park. Armed and ready to assert their dominance, they approached three individuals in the Briarwood community. The encounter turned violent when one of the brothers, armed with a gun, demanded a confrontation. When the residents didn't respond, the brothers reacted with brutality. One man was struck in the head with the gun, leaving a deep wound that required 17 stitches. As the man fell backward and lost consciousness, the message from Sur 13 was clear. They were a force to be feared. The Martinez Pino brothers didn't stop there. After the initial attack, they fired shots into the air, a show of power meant to intimidate anyone who might think of challenging them. This act of violence was just one of many that has marked Sur 13's dangerous presence in Florida. In another instance, Sur 13 leaders were believed to have terrorized the Westgate neighborhood in suburban West Palm Beach, a community located just north of Palm Beach International Airport. Their influence in the area was palpable, adding tension and fear to the daily lives of the residents. Sur 13's affiliations only add to their menace. They have strong alliances with gangs like the Aryan Brotherhood, Nazi lowriders. These connections have allowed them to maintain a significant level of control and extend their reach into different criminal activities. However, they also have their share of enemies, including the Nortenos, Nuestra Familia, and the Bloods. These rivalries often lead to violent confrontations, further destabilizing the communities in which they operate. Despite law enforcement efforts to curb their activities, Sur 13 remains active in Florida today. The gang continues to be involved in various illegal operations, including those tied to their connections with the Mexican Mafia and other criminal groups. Number 5. Aryan Brotherhood Gang. The Aryan Brotherhood, known by many names such as the Brand, Alice Baker, AB, or 1-2, is one of the most feared and notorious prison gangs in the United States. Originating in 1964, It was initially formed by a group of Irish bikers in California as a means of protection for white inmates during the tense era of desegregation in prisons. What began as a survival tactic quickly evolved into something much darker, growing into the largest and deadliest white supremacist prison gang in the country, with an estimated 20,000 members both inside and outside the prison system. The Aryan Brotherhood's reach extends to Florida, particularly within the state's prison system, where they are known for their violent nature and strict code of loyalty. Outside of prison walls, however, their influence is somewhat limited, but this does not diminish the danger they pose. The gang's reputation for brutality and their involvement in various criminal activities make them a significant threat. One chilling example of the Aryan Brotherhood's dangerous influence in Florida involves Joshua Edwards, a gang member who carried out a heinous crime that shook the community. Edwards abducted a woman from a convenience store in Escambia County, forcing her into her own car at gunpoint. Over the course of the night, he drove her across state lines, subjected her to repeated assaults, and terrorized her with threats of violence. The ordeal didn't end until Edwards forced the woman to accompany him as he searched for another vehicle after their car broke down in a park. The victim's nightmare finally concluded when Edwards left her stranded after stealing another woman's car keys, leaving both women to grapple with the trauma he inflicted. Such incidents highlight the Aryan Brotherhood's ruthless approach to crime and their readiness to employ extreme violence to achieve their ends. Though their power outside of prisons may not be as far-reaching, stories like this underscore the ongoing threat they pose to communities. The Aryan Brotherhood also maintains a bitter rivalry with several other gangs like the Nortenos, Bloods, Sur 13, particularly those of different racial backgrounds. These rivalries often lead to violent clashes within prison walls, further entrenching their reputation for brutality. Number 4. Nortenos. This gang has expanded its reach into Florida. Their presence in Florida, though not as strong as in their home state, is still significant due to their involvement in various criminal activities. The Nortenos have engaged in substance trafficking. These operations have allowed them to establish a foothold in Florida, particularly in urban areas where gang activity is more prevalent. Their ability to organize and maintain a network across state lines has made them a dangerous presence in the Sunshine State. In addition to substance trafficking, the Nortenos have also been involved in violent crimes that contribute to their fearsome reputation. These crimes include assaults, armed robberies, and acts of intimidation against both rival gang members and civilians. The gang's willingness to use violence to assert its control and protect its interests has made them a target for law enforcement, yet their influence persists. The Nortenos' primary rivals in Florida, as in California, are the Surenos, a gang affiliated with the Mexican mafia. This rivalry has led to violent confrontations as both gangs vie for control of territories and criminal enterprises. The tension between the Nortenos and the Surenos is long-standing and deeply rooted, with both gangs viewing the other as a mortal enemy. In addition to their conflict with the Surenos, the Nortenos have also clashed with various gang sets like the Bloods and Netas, further escalating the level of violence associated with their activities. Today, the Nortenos continue to operate in Florida, though their influence is not as dominant as that of other gangs. They remain active, particularly in areas with larger Hispanic populations, but they face significant challenges from law enforcement and rival gangs. Number 3. Almighty Imperial Gangsters. The Almighty Imperial Gangsters, known for their violent reputation, began in the tough streets of Chicago during the 1980s. This gang quickly grew, spreading its influence beyond Illinois to other states, including Indiana, and eventually making its way to the streets of South Florida. In these new territories, the gang became a significant force, attracting thousands of members and establishing a menacing presence. The South Florida chapter of the Almighty Imperial Gangsters Nation took root under the leadership of Victor Emmanuel Lopez, who was also known by his street name, Magic. Lopez's rise to power was marked by his ruthless control over areas in Broward County, dubbed Moneyside, and parts of Miami-Dade County, such as Little Havana, Alapata, Hammocks, Kendall, and Homestead, collectively known as Homicide. These regions under his command became hotbeds of criminal activities, with Lopez at the center of the storm. Lopez's reign was characterized by a series of violent acts that sent shockwaves through the community. In 2006, he was involved in a notorious incident where he fired shots into a car, resulting in the tragic demise of Rivki Hazma and leaving 2 others injured. This act was just the beginning of a violent spree that showcased the gang's danger to society. The following year, Lopez took part in a drive-by shooting targeting a suspected rival gang member. However, in a grim turn of events, an innocent bystander was caught in the crossfire, highlighting the gang's disregard for human life. The danger posed by the almighty Imperial Gangsters extended beyond random acts of violence. The gang, under Lopez's command, was deeply involved in illegal operations, including racketeering and narcotics distribution. These activities not only brought in substantial profits for the gang, but also fueled further violence as they fought to maintain control over their territories. One of the most chilling aspects of the gang's activities was its willingness to eliminate anyone who posed a threat to its operations. This was exemplified in another crime run when Lopez ordered the execution of Mauricio Waikai, a state witness who had provided crucial information in a case against him. Waikai's death was a stark reminder of the lengths the gang would go to silence those who dared to stand against them. Number 2. MS-13. MS-13, also known as Mara Salvatrucha, is a gang that has carved out a reputation for being one of the most violent and dangerous criminal organizations in the world. The origins of MS-13 trace back to the streets of Los Angeles in the 1980s, where Salvadoran immigrants, fleeing civil war, banded together for protection. Over time, the group evolved from a small street gang into a vast criminal network with a presence in various parts of the United States, including Florida. In Florida, MS-13's growth has been marked by a series of violent and ruthless activities that have solidified its reputation as a dangerous force. The gang began establishing its presence in Florida in the early 2000s, spreading its influence through the state's urban centers and into smaller communities. Unlike other gangs, MS-13 has a unique structure, with decentralized groups operating independently, but united by a common identity and purpose. This has allowed them to be both widespread and difficult to dismantle. MS-13's criminal activities in Florida are diverse and deeply unsettling. They engage in various illegal enterprises, including substance trafficking, human exploitation, and fraud. Their methods are brutal, often targeting those within their own communities, particularly Central Americans. The gang is known for its extreme violence, inflicting harm not just on rivals but also on innocent bystanders, including women and children. This level of brutality has made them a notorious name in the criminal underworld. One particularly horrifying example of the danger posed by MS-13 in Florida is the case of Oscar Solis. Solis, an MS-13 member, was involved in the dismemberment of Randall Cook, an Uber Eats driver in Holiday, Florida. This incident unfolded in April 2023, when Cook, a 59-year-old man, disappeared after making a delivery to Solis's home. Surveillance footage later revealed Solis carrying several trash bags out of his house, which were found to contain the remains of Cook. The gruesome nature of this crime sent shockwaves through the community, highlighting the lethal threat that MS-13 members pose. Number 1. Latin Kings Gangs. The Latin Kings is one of the most powerful and organized Latino gangs in the United States, with a history that dates back to the mid-20th century. The gang was founded in Chicago during the 1940s by Puerto Rican immigrants seeking a sense of identity and protection in a harsh and often hostile environment. What started as a group aimed at community defense and cultural pride eventually evolved into a notorious criminal organization known for its violence and strict code of conduct. In the 1990s, the Latin Kings made their way to Florida, and over the years, they have become the largest and most influential gang in the state. They established themselves in Florida's urban areas, particularly in neighborhoods with significant Hispanic populations. With their arrival came a wave of criminal activities that spread fear throughout the communities they infiltrated. The Latin Kings are involved in a wide range of illegal activities, making them one of the most dangerous gangs in Florida. Their criminal operations include substance trafficking, assaults, home invasions, and extortion. The gang's members are known for their loyalty to the organization, which is enforced through violence and intimidation. Once someone becomes a Latin King, leaving the gang is nearly impossible without severe consequences. A chilling example of the gang's ruthlessness occurred in 2021, when a man in Florida who wished to leave the Latin Kings paid the ultimate price. The man was found lying next to his car in Brooksville, unresponsive and with clear signs of having suffered a violent attack. The investigation revealed that he had been a member of the Latin Kings and was attempting to resign from the gang. This decision led to his death, which was the result of a brutal ritual known as stripping, a violent process required for anyone who wants to leave the gang.